question, please let us know in the chat. And just with tonight's game, if you could please limit any follow-ups to just one question so we can get everybody's questions addressed, that would be great. And we can go ahead and start with Ted. Ted, did you have a question?
Well, I'm sorry, as it's been a while. I just teed it up for you, Steve. How did today go for you? Did you get done everything you wanted to do? How close were you to other things?
Um, I wouldn't say we did everything we wanted to do, but we had areas that we wanted to address. You know, or obviously acquiring Peter, Craig as a forward, and moving out of forward, losing a forward yesterday on waivers. It was, and actually losing Carter Mazer as well. It was important that we bring in another forward where, we've had, as you all know, a tough stretch here recently, but we're still in the thick of things for those wild card spots. So we still want to give ourselves the best chance we can to compete for a playoff spot here. So we're hoping Peter can come in and give us a boost in net. Greg maybe provide a little bit of offense throughout the lineup, but things have happened pretty quickly. So I'm not exactly sure what our lines will be, but historically, Craig has been a guy that's been able to shoot the puck in the net a little bit, and we can use a little. So I'm pleased with the trade. We didn't sacrifice or give up future assets, which we weren't prepared to do probably for a rental player, and there weren't honestly a lot of options for moves that mates or that work for us or that fit with the age group of our players on players with terms on their contracts.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Max?
Steve, how do you see the goaltending situation shaking out then? Do you plan to carry three, or what's the vision?
Yeah, we're going to keep three on our roster now. What we'd like to do, how does it play out? We bring in Peter. We've got the three, as you know, with Cam and Alex, but trading for Peter, we're going to expect them to play. How many games everybody plays, I'm not really sure. What we want to leave Sebastian in playing in the minors, playing in GR and playing a lot, and down there as well, Jack Campbell playing. We'd like him to play more games down there. So as I said, we still are trying our best to make the playoffs. And we felt like let's just hang on to the three. If we get an injury, we still have up here, and we can leave everybody, the other two guys, in GR. So we'll see how it plays out. But in the acquisition and acquiring Peter Mrazek, we expect them to play games. How many, I'm not sure, and it'll be based on performance for all three guys for that matter.
It hasn't been his best statistical season. Like, what was your evaluation like on him, and where do you think he can help you?
Well, we're hoping he helps us in net, Max.
I mean, is there something you're seeing in him that gives you confidence that there's a little more there?
Well, it's a strange time in the NHL for goaltenders. The people that played with and were here in the organization when Peter was here early in his career really support him, the person, and his competitiveness. It's up and down around the league. We look at goals against averages, save percentage of the goaltenders, and it's a bit all over the place. We're just one thing that is also was attractive to us. He signed for another season, and the goalie market right now, looking into the summer, what goalies are signing for, the term and the dollar amounts. We, for what our options were today and what we're looking at, our options might be in the off season. We thought it was, it's good insurance for us maybe. And it doesn't necessarily preclude us from, should we want to, if an option comes up in whether it's trade or free agency at potentially doing something else. But we right now we have 2 goaltenders signed for next year, and we're comfortable with that. And for the remainder of this year, and on Peter, we think his competitiveness and his experience will give us some quality starts.
Thank you.
Ansar?
Yeah, Steve, just having Mrazek and Talbot signed for another year seems to indicate maybe Kosa needs some more time in Grand Rapids. Just what are your thoughts on his timeline and development?
For the most part, I think Sebastian's had a really good year. He continues to improve. Before like I kind of fully assess him, I'd like to, or make my determination on where he's at in his career. We've got a stretch run here and hopefully a good playoff run, and I'll kind of make my final evaluation when the season is over. Yes, in acquiring 2 goaltenders right now, I'd say, I'd rather take a conservative approach, and if the season ends so strongly for Sebastian and GR, and he has a good off season and a good preseason and simply forces his way in, that would be a great thing, Answer. So, but right now, again, looking at the market for next year, we felt not only does Peter help us short term for the remainder of this year, it gives us some solidity for going into next year. And like I say, if we want to do something different, I don't think what we've done here precludes us from doing that. If we think there's something that is a real upgrade that makes sense, whether again in trade or whatnot, we'll do that. But let's see how the season itself plays out. And again, if we have to go into next year, we're comfortable with that. But there's you look at some of the deals that the goalies have signed in the last 2 months, and look what's potentially out there on the market. It's going to be a challenge.
Also, is bringing Sandin Pellikka in after his season in Sweden is done, is that a possibility, or is that something you're looking at?
It's a possibility for sure. Like his team is, they're got a few games. I'm not exactly sure how many games left, but what I'd prefer to say is, yeah, it's historically it's been done with players under contract and whatnot once their season's over. I think out of respect to him and his team, they're focused on making the playoffs and having a good run, and we'll see what happens once this season's over. We can make a determination, but it's definitely something to consider.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Rachel?
Hi, Steve. Looking to piece together the kind of timeline of when you were seriously looking at bringing a goaltender and addressing that need in the fold, because there was a time earlier this season where you did have 3 goaltenders, and then Lyon and Talbot were handling things pretty well. So I'm just curious if this became more of a recent need for you based on struggles in net, or when that idea became something you wanted to bring back in.
Question. Even going back, even like to last summer, you kind of look ahead, with what we have on our roster, you look ahead projections on whether it's even free agents last summer. Does it make sense to bring somebody in on some term, if there's a guy you like, if there's a fit. So, knowing, we did bring Cam in last year, and knowing Alex has 1 more year in his deal, Billy has 1 more year in his deal, not knowing how this season is going to play out. So probably start looking at it a year ago, and then watch how the season, we decided we're going to see how the season plays out. We wanted to see if Billy recovered from his injuries last year, and then make a decision at some point. So as we got closer to the deadline, we wanted to see, hey, is there potentially anyone out there that can not only upgrade us for the remainder of the season, but moving forward, or do we go with what we have? And for what the cost to acquire Peter, we thought it we thought it was, make the decision. We, like the decision. We'll see how it plays out. And we do like the fact that he signed for next year, and that was part of the attraction to it. It gives us a little bit of certainty that we do know we have two, and we were concerned about going into the off season and trying to address it at that point. And this puts us in a little bit better position to, if something great comes along, we can react that way. But again, we're a little bit nervous going into the off season with what the landscape looks like for goaltenders around the league.
Sure. And sorry to sneak in another follow-up. When we look at what's coming in Cossa and the work that Campbell specifically has been doing in Grand Rapids, I'm curious if it feels like there's been a shift in perspective on him since McClellan came, given his experience with Jack and other arenas. I just don't know if that adds maybe a little more depth to the confidence in Campbell's return and growth.
I'm not sure, Rachel, sorry, I understand your question. Can you maybe ask it
Yeah,
again?
sure. I think maybe with Villy and Cossa and Campbell being stashed away eventually, I'm curious if sending Villy off and McClellan's experience with Campbell meant a little more established confidence in Jack.
Yeah, well, teams generally don't carry three goaltenders at the NHL or the American League level. Even in the American League level, they don't play as many games, in the season as we do. There's less starts for goaltenders, makes it even a bit more challenge to get three. So we're kind of juggling, starts, trying to get everybody going. Obviously we got a young guy in Sebastian. We want him to get starts. Jack was, again, we knew going into the season that we had an abundance of goaltenders. The plan was at some point we're going to move one of these guys, and as the season went on, we dealt with some injuries and various things, and kind of ham and egged it for a while, and then everybody's healthy, and later in the season, recently we were able to move Villy, and part of that was one to get everybody playing, and when we moved Villy to Anaheim. Obviously, Villy's making a lot of money in playing in the American Hockey League, and one we wanted Jack playing, one we wanted Sebastian playing, and the ability to move Villy's contract, give him a chance to play, and for us to move the contract was important, knowing we were comfortable at the time with Alex and Cam and Ned here in Detroit, and so that was how that whole thing lined up. But ultimately, these goalies, if you want them to be sharp, you need them playing, and especially, like I said, down in the minors, it's even harder. And, so we'll leave them down there for now, and we carry the three here in Detroit, and like everybody likes to have a good number three. It's important. We feel we have a good number three here, and we'll see how it plays out. Who is that number three?
Sure. Thanks, Steve.
Sam?
Steve, how did the Andrew Copp injury impact the way you were thinking about things going into the deadline?
Well, obviously we did look hard at trying to acquire a centerman. I look up at my board here over my shoulder, and we do have a lot of guys that play center. JT, Michael Rasmussen, Joe while he was here, Marco as well. So, but we did look at the opportunity. If we could have done anything at that position, was try to bring in a more of an offensive minded guy, creative player. And if we couldn't do that, we try to bring in a winger to make up for the loss of Andrew. We weren't able to do that, honestly. Were those players available? The high profile or the higher end guys where you saw what they went for, we're not in a position to do that today. And even kind of kicking around as far as the centerman position goes, maybe on a lesser note, we weren't unless we were prepared to get into first and second round picks and good prospects. There weren't a lot available for us, so we really couldn't address the position. And again, the option now is to does Marco move back into the middle for us? Kind of let that play out, but we couldn't. There just wasn't a centerman that we could acquire at a reasonable cost unless we're ready to get into that UFA market and give up multiple picks and prospects for guys that are rentals with no assurance that we could re-sign them.
And zooming out a bit from the deadline itself, is there anything that surprised you about the way the team responded to the coaching change?
Um, well, certainly pleased for the most part with how our team has responded. Coming out of the break here a little bit, we've lost a little bit of steam. Um, you know, but I'm very pleased. I honestly I didn't know what to expect, and the change wasn't made just to give us a little bump or a kickstart this year. This was, I believe Todd is a very good coach, and he's going to take this team. He'll do a good job moving forward with us. So again, I was obviously pleased get us into the playoff race, and but now here we've got to see if we can get. We got to win hockey games, obviously, and win a lot of them. But I wasn't sure what to expect coming out of the coaching change. Honestly, I didn't know that what was going to happen, but felt it was the right thing to do at that time, and I still do. And again, it wasn't just to get through the season. It's hopefully a long term, and I expect it to be a long term thing.
Thank you.
Okay.
Kevin Allen.
Hey, Steve, I'm sure you haven't had time to do a deep analysis on what's happened today around the league, but obviously some strangeness within the Eastern Conference with Boston on a big sell-off. Marchand ended up in Florida. Just in general terms, like what do you think today's events has done to the race and the wildcard race in the Eastern Conference?
Yeah. I just before Kevin, just before we waiting to get everybody on here, just kind of went on the internet to run down to see what's happened. Got a rough idea of who's where. I don't know what the return is on some of these deals yet, but Florida, adding Seth Jones and Brad Marchand to top 4D and what I consider a first line forward. Great players that strengthens them. They lost some players in the offseason. Tampa's re-strengthened their lineup, their depth. They look great. Ottawa's made some moves to strengthen them as well. Toronto, I know they made a couple of moves. I think I haven't really had a chance to address that, but the Eastern Conference with Washington, I think they did a couple of things, but they're the best record in the East already. So it's going to be like it's a challenge. Whoever gets out of the East, the first round is the first round. That 2-3 matchups are going to be really interesting on both sides, and it's going to be like an incredibly exciting playoff run. Where we're looking at it, I think it's going to be an exciting battle, and I'm hoping that we can remain in it for those wildcard spots too. So it's gonna, the NHL is having a great year, and a lot of excitement in these moves here, particularly in the East, are going to make it very interesting. And for that matter, as I sit here in Colorado and Dallas, and not sure what Vegas has done at this point, but they're a very good team regardless. Winnipeg, it's going to be a heck of a first round of the playoffs all around, and you're going to see 4 really good teams bounced in the first round.
And just a real quick question as well. I mean, this is the way it always works, but as you've added, someone like Soderblom from Grand Rapids and other players as well, all of a sudden now they've kind of struggled a little bit. I know you want to keep that team competitive to give your prospects a real good opportunity. Are you concerned a little bit about where they are just because you had to call up players
in GR?
Yeah,
Kev, it's ultimately there's it's important to have a good foreign team. We want them to be competitive. Last year these guys were key contributors to us getting in the playoffs and going on a little bit of a run there for a bit. This year, part of having an American League team is there to serve the NHL team, and bringing these players up. At the beginning, you could plan it in the off season and say, what, player A, player B, they're on the Red Wings. We're going to go out and get some free agents for that. we weren't prepared to do that. Like we felt like we felt like Elmer. We thought Marco at the time, we need them to start in the American League. Like and Marco's been up since early in the season and has remained. And Elmer we were watching him play. He's had a very good season in Grand Rapids. And we're the point total he put up down there didn't reflect this play. And like he was generating scoring chances for himself and his team, playing hard, becoming an impact player. We were waiting for him to start to shoot it in the net more and more and leave him there to get more confidence. Ultimately, we brought him up and he's had a positive impact. Losing Casper, losing Elmer for sure weakens them. We're bringing Dom Shine up, as we move bodies up. Ultimately, they're helping us here in Detroit. And that's a good thing. It does hurt the American League team. We do have the option at the end of the whenever of reassigning the guys that we've made eligible for playoffs in GR. But that's kind of the way it goes at times in the American League. You see some teams with a really good regular season, all of a sudden they get rated at the end, and vice versa. Teams can load up at the end sometimes, and that were pretty mediocre. So that's one of the challenges for the managers of the American Hockey League teams is sometimes their roster is really affected positively or negatively by what the big club does.
Thanks, Steve.
Bob Duff?
Yeah, Steve, you mentioned bringing up Elmer and now obviously adding Craig Smith, who, as you pointed out, has scored a lot in the past. Is trying to get more productivity out of your bottom six forwards, has that kind of been a mission of late to help boost the team's chances?
Yep. I don't know what the right word is, but yes, we're trying to address it a little bit, get more 5-on-5 scoring, but a little bit more out of our bottom. I don't want to say our bottom, but out of up and down the lineup for the most part. Lucas, Dylan, Alex, Marco, Patrick have scored. I think Vladdy Tarasenko has actually played better and had more chances than his numbers reflect. I'm hoping that he keeps shooting it, that some of these will start to go in for him. Jonathan Berggren in kind of a limited role has produced for us. So, I talk about Joe Veleno for a minute, and that, in the role he's in for his salary moving forward, it's going to be difficult next year to keep him in the lineup, in the role that he's in, and the kind of the role we foresee that we can use that cap space to maybe do something different. And acquiring Craig is a different player than Joe. More a right shot that can is more of a shooter. Hope that he can offset the loss of and again a different type of player, but losing Christian Fisher, losing Carter, and moving Joe in this deal. So yeah, I think he'll be a guy that can generate a little bit of offense, create some chances, and hopefully they go in not only for him but the guys he's playing with.
Is he going to be available tonight? Craig Smith?
Oh, yeah, no, Peter and Craig, we got it was too tight to get them in there to Washington to play on time. So we're fine with we have 12 forwards, the 2 goaltenders and 70 available, but they'll be here for practice on Sunday and available to go on Monday.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, Bob.
Elaine?
Hi, Steve. Regarding, still wanting to hold on to, high picks and prospects as such this time of year, does that kind of indicate where you still believe you're at in the rebuild, that those are still too valuable to surrender?
Certainly for rentals, yes. Players that have some term on their contract, and are younger, that are going to be a part of this group for like more than 1 or 2 years. I'm open to doing that. Though that type of deal wasn't available, the type of deal that was available is the pending unrestricted free agents that teams were selling off. like we didn't even get into that, to those discussions where we're not a fit for them. We're going to waste their time. So they're just, as you get closer to the deadline, you spend your time, you talk to every team, what they're trying to do with all their players, pending UFAs or players under contract. Is there a fit for anything? What do you want if you're willing to move that player? Do you want roster players? Do you want draft picks? And for roster players, they're not really players that fit our age group of our timeline today that teams were looking for futures, and yeah, just not one of those deals open right now. So for where we're at, and we'd love to make the playoffs. Obviously we all would, we know that, but to get into that rental thing, we're giving up our first round picks and all of our, whatever we consider our top prospects. And that, I think we would all agree that whether we like it or not, being in this situation, that's not the thing to do right now.
And just lastly, what would be your message to fans who maybe are impatient or, we're hoping for a little bit more at this trade deadline, given how the position the team has put itself in since Christmas?
Well, first of all, I understand the, maybe the frustration or the impatience. Like, as this is it's a hockey market, it's a hockey city. Like, people know the game, they want the team to do well. And I guess what I would say is we did what we thought we could to help give us a better chance here at the playoffs. Is it earth-shattering? No, it's not. But again, the only way we could do something earth-shattering is to give up first round picks and our best young players and prospects. And I think everybody would agree that that's to try and hope for us to get in isn't the time to do that. And like I said, we're prepared to use our pick and prospects, but it's got to be for players that we really like, that we believe in, and then that they're going to be a part of this thing next year and for future years and beyond. Otherwise, this whole thing has been, a waste of time, I think so, and just set us back and delay it even further. And nobody wants that.
I appreciate it. By the way, it's a bright sunny day here in Washington. You should have looked pretty dreary in Detroit.
Yeah, well, it's it's deceiving in the background. I consider it always bright and sunny in Detroit.
Thank you.
Carlos.
Yeah, I think we all consider it bright and sunny these days, Steve. Just checking in with the Yzer plan once again. You mentioned that you don't want to give up future assets for a rental player, yet you acknowledge that you're in the thick of the playoff run. Isn't spending a draft pick maybe worth it this year? And you're saying a first round pick. I mean, Joe Veleno was a first round pick, and obviously, it was time for him to move on. You don't know how these guys are going to work out, but if you can get somebody to help you immediately right now and the team needs it to end the playoff drought, you don't think do you think that might have been worth it this year?
No. First of all, I look back over the last 2 weeks, and particularly the last week and the last couple of days, even using a first round pick is like, I look at our team and say, okay, if is that player, what do I got to give up? Whether it's a first, second, third, a prospect, is he better than he's got to improve our team. The guys that are going to make us better, and bump somebody out of the lineup, like I wasn't getting for just a first round pick, and particularly, I don't know where we'll finish in the playoffs or in at the end of the season with a pick, but so again, using a first round pick for us where we are today to get, and I don't even want to, I'm not going to say the names that we talk about, there wasn't even something that to Carlos to consider for a first round pick that, oh, it's a rental, but he's so good, he's going to help us. Those are options aren't even out there. We're talking like third and fourth line players that like, hey, we're going to have to give up a second round pick. We got those guys. So we're adding to our depth. So, those aren't out there. The first round, it's to get guys that are making a difference. It's first round pick plus. And, like right or wrong, I'm not doing that because I don't believe in that. That's enough. And I'm going to sit there at the draft and at the end of June, and whether we get in it or not, it's different if you told me, hey, you're going to the finals or you're going to the cup, but you sit there at the draft and you're still a team that is building, hoping to get into the playoffs, and you don't have your first round picks, your second round picks. That's not the way to do it. I'm sorry.
It's just I guess, is there any consideration to the urgency that you might be feeling as far as if you're talking about first round picks, second round picks, those guys won't be here for 3 or 4 years, probably.
Yeah, maybe not even more. Yeah.
Maybe more. I mean, just to be totally blunt, you don't know if you're going to be here in that time. How much urgency? I mean, now the playoff run, you've already set a franchise record for not being in the playoffs. That was not all on you, obviously. But if it extends, do you feel that might change your urgency, or that you may regret not being a little bit more urgent to make more aggressive moves right now with the team, as close as it's been pretty much with Todd here on the bench?
Yeah. Well, again, Carlos, like, it's a very fair question. I'm going to always do what I think is best for the organization. And I'm going to make, and things change throughout the course of a season. And your plan can change short term, your plan can change depending on where you're at the deadline. I'm going to, again, I'm going to make what I think is the best decision. I'm not going to sit here and go, oh my God, I'm going to do this because I feel I have to save my job. I'm going to continue doing what I think is right. And here at the deadline, over the course of the summer, at the draft, and always do that and react. And I want to make the playoffs and I want to win a Stanley Cup as much as you or anybody in this city. And I take full responsibility for where we're at today. And again, to specifically answer your question, I'm going to make the best decisions that I can for us short term and long term, and not feel like I'm doing anything that is right for me. It's going to be right for the team.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We've got about 3 more questions. We'll go to Jonathan next.
Steve, this is looking a little further ahead down the line, but the Griffins announced, I believe it was yesterday, about the details for their 30th anniversary season, and part of that announcement was just the red-white game in Grand Rapids. I was wondering if you could maybe provide some clarity on what the status is of that for next fall.
Well, yeah, we are, traditionally we've done played our red-white game up in Traverse City on the Sunday of training camp. This year we're going to do it a little bit differently. And I don't have the date off the top of my head. I apologize for that, but we're going to do that in Grand Rapids. And I remember we haven't been there in a while. Obviously, it's in having our American League affiliate there, longtime American affiliate, and great fan base there as well. I think my last year as a player in 05 or 06 or whatever, we went over there and played a game, and everyone enjoyed it. And it was good. It was good for our partners in Grand Rapids, and it was good for our fan base in Grand Rapids, and we enjoyed it. I'm not sure if they've done one since, but since I've been back, we haven't, and we've talked about doing it for a while. So we'll go up. It'll shorten our stay in Traverse City a bit for it by a day, I guess. But anyway, the plan is to bring the guys down on the Sunday and play that traditional red-white game, and we're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Bob?
Hey there, Steve.
Hey, Bob, how are you?
Good, thank you. The market, as you mentioned, was difficult or tight or whatever, but I think I hear you saying that it wasn't as much the market as to where your team stands right now, that you didn't think you were ready to make a big splash, so to speak. How far off do you think that is? Because the young players are still going to be young next year and even the year after. How far off can it be before you can make that big splash?
Well, like I'm not like I'm never trying to just make a big splash. You know what? Like this year was like what's our goal at the trade deadline? Okay, our goal is um uh to try and make the playoffs. Try at the deadline is can we do something to help us make the playoffs? Okay, um when we feel like I guess when I feel like we're in a position that we really can like have all the pieces that you can make a long playoff run and say we're going for it. And I think it's safe to say like Florida's going for it, Toronto's going for it, Tampa's going for it. This like Washington just based on their record and their position in the standings. Obviously, they're going for it. And several teams in the West, they're all in to try and win a Stanley Cup, and they're giving all their future assets to try and win. We're not in that position to do that. Our goal here was to try and give ourselves a better chance to make the playoffs. In order to do that, to make that big splash, to get in on any of those guys that are splash worthy deals or that we're not there yet. So I think when we're willing to do that at the trade deadline, it's going to be because we think we have a chance to go for the Stanley Cup, not just to get in. Or we have a chance, and we think our team is, for whatever reason, is at the deadline. We're close to getting in, and we're do this, but we're doing it not just to get in. We're doing it to go and win. That's why that's my position on doing that. You know, the cap, there's going to be a rise in the salary cap this summer. Teams are going to have space. Already some of the top candidates, free agents, already are signed in the last month, in the last couple of hours. So there's fewer and fewer of those guys, and I'm not sure there'll be any of them available come the deadline. So, or come July 1st, excuse me. So, again, I think you when you're ready to start using your top prospects and go all in, and that is when you believe you're ready to win a Stanley Cup. And we're not there today. And if we're there by good fortune next year, then that's something we'd have to consider.
In other words, I hear you saying you don't want to half go for it.
No. Like let's, no, I'm not like when you really, like I said, like there's, it's going to be, just look at our division. 1, 2, 3, like out of those three, the great teams, one of them, they're the 2, 3 seed are playing in the playoffs, and one of them is going to be out in the first round. And they're going all in, but they're trying to win. And when I think we're a cup contender and like realistic, and when we're there at the deadline, and we can do that, like those are things we'll consider. And when the time comes, hopefully that time comes sooner than later, and we'll see if we're doing it.
Thank you.
I'm hoping we don't have to do it. I'm hoping we have all the depth and everything we need and we can keep it. That's probably a pipe dream, but we'll deal with that once we get there.
Right. Appreciate it.
Yep. No, thank you.
Last question will go to Will Birchfield.
Hey, Steve. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as you try and build what I would imagine you want to be a more imposing team, and not one that leads the league in fights and checks, but one that can forecheck with some more oomph, that can hang on to more pucks. What attributes do you feel like this team, this roster is lacking or missing? I guess more simply, how do you make this team harder to play against?
Well, there's a lot of ways to be harder to play against. More tenacious players, regardless of whether you're 5'9" or 6'5". Just continue to add like competitive guys that play hard, and then continue. Like I think you need some big guys that play hard. We'll continue to do that. Ultimately, you want to be hard to play against, have a really good team. But some of again, I go back to our team in 90. 97, 98 when we had and I run down our wingers and Marty Lapointe around 220, Shanny at 220, Mac at 220, Joey at 220. We added Thomas Sandstrom at the deadline, who was a 220 pounder. And I'm missing a couple too. We had these big boys on the wings, and not to mention Slava Fetisov, who was big. Murph was big and heavy, you know, and then Vladdy played like a 250 pounder, you know. So there's a lot of ways to become harder. You know, if you're suggesting our team isn't hard enough to play against, I'm not going to disagree with you. But part of it is getting bigger, more bigger bodies, but it's also getting more competitive, more determined players, and continue to add and getting better, you know, getting better. Like as I look up at our board, it's Dominic Shine. Okay. You know, he's been called up for the first time this year, is 31 years old. He's not a big guy, but man, is he competitive? Is he hard to play against? And like he's a good example for a lot of these guys that ultimately when you're playing best on best in the playoffs and trying to fight for spots, you got to be really competitive. You got to be hard. So there's a lot of ways to do it, Will, and to address it, and through talent, through determination, through competitiveness, obviously through size. And on that note, based on what happened at the Four Nations, I think whether we like it or not, I think fighting is going to make a comeback now, because that got your attention.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Steve. I appreciate the history lesson.
Okay, a history lesson, but I always refer to that, you know, that team, like,
yeah,
it got us over the hump, and it was like, man, we had these big boys, and at the end of every round, instead of us limping off the ice, it was our opponents limping off the ice, you know.
All right, that looks like that's all the questions for today. So thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you, Steve, for taking the time.
I appreciate everybody's time. Sorry to keep everyone waiting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Keep on fighting. Watch me go. I'll be living in a better world. Ooh, you never bring me down.